Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Blatstein, the physician founder of Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service. We are starting off the new year, January 3. Here's my website, pprsus.com, Physician Prison Consultants. My phone, 240-888-7778. So once a week, and I started this last year, I do a summary of current events for the previous week titled, this is now going to be titled Federal Charges, BOP News, Bureau of Prison News, Updated Weekly, 2026. And early release to home confinement is a big push that's been started by the current director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, but there's eligibility requirements. Are you eligible for early release? The devil is going to be in your preparation or lack thereof for your pre-sentence interview. It's probably the most important meeting of your life on this particular topic before you go to prison. So today it is the 3rd of January. And the topics are going to be from the Sentencing Project, the Lisa Legal Foundation. These are the resources I use. Solitary Watch, which is the new one I looked into. Federal Legal News, Bureau of Prisons, In the News, Above the Law, and Medical. We'll see how many of these I can get to today. So trends in the criminal legal reform, this comes from the Sentencing Project, is that the United States, as we are well aware, unfortunately, it's the highest incarceration rates globally, far exceeding other industrialized nations. But there are states who have embraced criminal legal reforms. Really, not a lot of states, but there are some that we would hope the the Bureau of Prisons would also follow. There's something called the Second Look Act. The Second Look Act, let me open up, these are 3 different versions of it from the Sentencing Project, Prison Policy Initiative, and as most people are familiar with, Families Against Mandatory Minimums. But the Second Chance Act is for something that happened after your sentencing. And so the states have taken a greater, have made better use of this than the federal system has. But it deals with either excessive sentences, which has flooded the Bureau of Prisons and state and federal prisons, state and state prisons, county jails with the number of people. And the mandatory minimum sentencing has really been a tough road to hoe. You can go through this if you look it up on my website. There's absence of retroactive sentencing reliefs. And this is the last decade has seen a beginning in the turn of all federal and state against overly punitive changes. There are current mechanisms for early release, but they're inadequate. I would say that I'll add to this that the First Step Act allows now for you to earn credits on the federal side to be towards early release. But it's things that the next thing can apply to whether it is federal or state, and that is what's happened different in your world. Are you eligible for early release because you're the only caregiver in your family, and a spouse or significant other or parent is on needs care, and you would be the only person available to do it, but there's eligibility requirements for that. There also is, if you have a medical need and the prison is not providing that medical care for you, no judge intends for a sentence of X number of years to be a death sentence. They expect you to be able to be rehabilitated and then to be able to leave prison. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And so you can go through all of this. Second looks says your second looks would function as a safeguard against costly and unnecessary incarceration, not just for those already sentenced, but those sentencing in the future as well. So it's a good article, but Second Chance Act is a very big thing, especially on the federal side, because if things have changed for you subsequent to your case, or you have learned new things, or the law has changed, these are all options into Second Chance Act. But states have been taking this a little bit further with more benefit. State of Delaware, they now allow sentence reviews for individuals rehabilitated after 25 years, or if you're over 60 years old and you've been in prison for 15 years. Georgia, another one, permits courts to waive mandatory minimums when abuse is a significant factor in the events and allows the incarcerated survivors of domestic violence or a child abuse to seek reduced sentence influenced by their own experiences. So these are all novel, realistic arguments that states are beginning and have been doing. Maryland, their second look act is for individuals age 18 to 25 that after 20 years, excluding certain violent offenses, or if they're able to identify medical or geriatric parole and they're over 65 years old. Scaling back cocaine sentencing. This was a very big deal in the day because there were those that got arrested and convicted with powder cocaine and those with crack cocaine. And so in Arizona, the law changed to remove the lower quantity threshold for hydrolyzed cocaine, including crack cocaine. Virginia, their new law provided a legal distinction between crack and powder cocaine for the purposes of sentencing. And lastly, you have, which is unfortunate, that we had now the ex-president of Honduras, who shipped into the United States 400 tons of cocaine. It's a lot of cocaine. So now it's expected that judges will sentence, similar cases around the country should be sentenced similarly. But is this information that if you have a drug case, you can now take to the court? It's between you and your attorney. I'm not a lawyer. You need a lawyer. We're going to go down here. And then there's emerging developments within the criminal legal system. Maryland raises the minimum penalties for drug offenses. Now, Nebraska charges youth as an adult at 12 years old. These are not great things. Maine has question one on the voter ID for incarcerated individual, highlighting the challenges for reforming the legal system. And we can go on to Arkansas, Colorado, Illinois, Montana, North Dakota. From here, and you can read here, I'll go onto the website, and I update it every week. All of these have links that you can open. Lisa Legal is another great information resource. And so what we have here is an individual, and I like putting these up here initially because the pictures make it, attracts your attention. But essentially, this gentleman, Ed, had to plead guilty for child support, for failing to pay child support. But he was sentenced for 5 years on probation. He had paid the child support in full. He got his child support all paid up and was released from probation. But he was stopped as a felon with a gun. And the circuit here said that, that having that gun invalidates felon in possession for nonviolent case. So it's nonviolent in this particular court. It's very interesting. The Fifth Circuit ruled that there's no justification to disarm him because his offense was not a violent offense. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't recall there being a difference between if you're a felon and it's not a violent offense. I was under the assumption that all felons are not allowed to have weapons. But this particular case, and you can, again, all these links open up to these cases. Being incarcerated in prison isn't cheap. We are having, and I don't know that I cover this here, but the number of people being convicted is decreasing overall in the United States, but the incarceration rate is increasing. How does that? So cost for a federal inmate, if you're housed in the Federal Bureau of Prisons or a non-Bureau facility, it's about $130 a day, $129.21 a day. This is what the Bureau gives out, is telling Congress. But it's their annual COIF, cost of incarceration. Of course, if you're going to be incarcerated in a supermax, the cost per day is a lot higher than if you're in a minimum camp. If you're going to go to a halfway house, residential reentry center, it's going to be about $119.73 a day. Home confinement is a whopping $13, $12.96 a day. There's no reason why not nonviolent people that have come through the First Step Act and Second Chance Act with the push that President Trump is making with the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons support, allocating home confinement for those who are eligible, so that knowing what it requires to be eligible, all this information needs to be available to you before you even go into your pre-sentence interview, because placement matters. If you're be able to get the drug program matters. How you conduct yourself in prison, all this matters. It goes towards a potential early release to home confinement, which this past June, and you can find it on my website, but this past June, this is what Director Marshall has been attempting to do. Who runs a courtroom? This is an unusual case. And so this was a woman who she was carrying a gun, didn't use the gun, but was carrying the gun in the course of a drug crime with the intent to distribute meth. And so she chose to cooperate. Now, cooperating, and here is the court case. You can look it up. I said everything I have linked in here for you. But she was given a potential of a 5-year sentence, but they gave her, while she was on pretrial release, and the judge noted this in the sentencing document. She successfully completed drug rehabilitation, became a mentor. She managed two jobs, paid off her fines, obtained a driver's license after 12 years. With newfound independence, she bought a field vehicle, found stable housing, and worked on building relationships with her daughters. The judge noted that this is, an unusually good thing to see as someone who's being given a second chance. And he was going to try and give a sentence that did not include incarceration. But the 800-pound gorilla in the room, however, the one opinion that mattered was the United States attorney. She had the authority to allow the district court to impose a just sentence, but chose not to. And so this is not the end of the story, because you have to look through the document of her case, but I believe that it's still within the appeal route. But doing everything you should do, this is also going to get you, if you're going into prison, you are going to make an ally, if you will, of the probation officer that does the interview, the judge who is going to sentence you, because you're able, as she did successfully, convince the judge that she had changed her ways. Unfortunately, the prosecutor was not going to, did not agree. Be that as it may, I believe this is still in the appeal phase. Presidential clemencies. These bring little hope to most federal prisoners, inmates. The clemencies is a great thing. I don't know that I agree personally with how they're being doled out, but the fact that clemency and pardons are being addressed is a very, very big thing. And the lesson this is also from Lisa Legal, that the Washington Examiner reviewed President Trump's unprecedented first year clemency record of 1,600 people, 11 months. But these are kind of some of the takeaways. The Examiner then listed Trump's five most controversial clemency actions. Mind you, in none of these clemencies are there people that don't know someone who knows President Trump, that doesn't have a lot of money to give or to donate. They just, are a regular person. First was on the list was Ross Ulbricht. He's a drug black marketer operator whom Trump promised to pardon. We have this gentleman Zago, who was founder of Beyonce. He was pardoned after serving 4 months. I believe this is where his mother donated $1 million. Former Congressman George Santos. I don't know how this guy wound up getting pardoned, but he did. And then we have the former Honduran president, Juan Hernando Hernandez, was pardoned for drug trafficking and 400 tons of cocaine. So if you are staring at a drug crime, I don't know how your attorney is going to be able to reconcile that he has so many years. If you only had a kilo or a pound of cocaine, why is that? Why is a longer sentence, in your best interest? I'm not a lawyer. Then we had another gentleman who, there's a guy by the name of last name Cellular, who Trump pardoned, but then he went ahead. I think it's a final porch top five. The Examiner noted a pardon of Representative Henry Cellular, a Democratic of Texas, was charged but not yet convicted. So he was pardoned, and Trump thought he would go to the Republican Party, but he's staying as a Democrat. There's a guy, Paul Witzak, who failed to pay over $4 million in taxes. He was pardoned. I mean, if you have a tax crime of $25,000 or $100,000, I think you're going to get a lot of time, and unless you know someone. Trevor Milton, convicted of defrauding investors of Nikola, he was pardoned by Trump. And so, the moral of this story is that the pardoning and clemency needs definitely to be overhauled, because we need more people doing less time in prison and being productive as they go home. But unfortunately, as of this juncture, which is, I said, the 3rd of January 2026, there's very few regular prison inmates that have been able to get a pardon or clemency because they haven't known anyone, or they don't have $1 million extra to give the president. And then I go through this here as a non-attorney, containing the topic of presidential pardons. And this is kind of what I wrote here. These are interactive analyzers. This is, so you can see it. This allows you and your attorney to be able to put in here, the fiscal year. This is not 2025. It hasn't updated, but it will update. And then you put in a circuitry and you put in all your demographic information to see what is common for your particular sentence in your area. And then again, this is another one for sentencing specifically on the sentencing table, and you can put in exactly what you have, what charges. And so these are important links that you need to become comfortable with your attorney long before you get to your pre-sentence interview. Solitary watch. Solitary watch is a new one that's come up, but let's see if I can pull this up here. No, that didn't work. That's not good. That didn't work either. It looks like I got to fix that. How about this? Okay, solitary watch, and they just focus on solitary confinement. But this article had to do with the ability of, let me see where that came in here. Prison food. Okay. And so they discussed here talking about prison food and the fact that there's found there when there were federal prison inspectors, they found rotting produce, insect infestation in the storerooms, broken refrigerators, bread with mold. But this should not be a new topic, if you will, because I lost my place. Let's come down here. Not sure how that happened. Okay, because the Federal Bureau of Prisons had an inspection that they did in June 17 of 2025, and they went through prisons, giving them not a great inspection report. And here, concurrent inspections of BU food service, and it goes through Mid-Atlantic, all the four different regions or more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 regions. But suffice it to say that it's not. If you're incarcerated now and the food's terrible, being moldy, have insects in it, it's not safe in the storage areas. You're not going to be alone, but this is a reason, especially if you have a medical condition. You didn't expect this when you went into prison. So is this a second look act? Maybe. Medical, maybe. Biden didn't really believe in executions for execution's sake, so he commuted 37 men. But the Department of Justice now is going out of their way to make life hell for them. And the thing is that we have had individuals who have been on death row, who it's not many, but who have been found innocent. Most of them maybe are guilty. I can't say. But the thing is that to make someone's life worse may be not the best use of dollars in a prison that doesn't have the dollars to spend. The 60-minute video, 60-minute segment rather, that was going to be done on the immigration policy, the El Salvador, and this was stopped for political reasons by the new head of CBS 60 Minutes. You can go ahead here and click on this 60-minute link and come down here, and you'll be able to turn that on. Let's see, I did right, and there it goes. And so that is the first half of what I covered on the 3rd of January, 2026. And I will go into that. I'll finish it at a later date, but I hope you found this helpful and it was not too lengthy. And I thank you for taking the time to listen.